If you're a high-achieving woman, you're probably used to being the capable one, the strong one, the reliable one, the one who keeps everything together. And most of the time that works until it comes to family. Because suddenly setting even a small boundary, saying no to a request, asking for space, or choosing yourself doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels wrong, selfish, mean, like you're being a bad daughter, partner, or mom. If that sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. That guilt is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's a learned nervous system response. My name is Dr. Mini Ratu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and yoga educator with Stanford Yoga X. Today, we're going to talk about why boundaries with family trigger so much guilt, the psychological patterns underneath that reaction, and how to say no with love without abandoning yourself afterwards. If this kind of work resonates, please like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Let's start with the biggest misunderstanding about boundaries. For high achievers, the biggest obstacle to boundaries is this belief. If I say no, I'm being selfish. That belief feels true, but it's learned, not factual. Many high-performing women operate from two deeply reinforced patterns. The first is self-sacrifice, the belief that your needs should come last in order to maintain connection. The second is unrelenting standards, the belief that you must always be competent, helpful, and emotionally available. These patterns are often rewarded early in life. You learn that being reliable keeps the peace. Being helpful earns approval. Being low maintenance protects relationships. So when you set a boundary as an adult, it doesn't just feel awkward. It feels like you're failing at who you're supposed to be. Here's where the misunderstanding comes in. We tend to think in a false binary. Saying yes is loving, saying no is rejecting. But psychologically, that's not how boundaries work. You can say yes from fear, obligation, or resentment, and you can say no from honesty, care, and respect. It's not the word yes or no, it's the intention and the internal state behind it. If this pattern of guilt, self-sacrifice, and over-functioning feels familiar, this is something we work through deeply inside my 12-week program, Unstuck Burnout to Breakthrough. We don't just teach boundary scripts. We work on beliefs and nervous system responses underneath them. So boundaries come from worth, not fear. I'll share more at the end. For now, let's look at what boundaries actually look like in real life. Think of this as a 2x2 matrix. On the x-axis, you have what you say, so yes or no. On the y-axis, you have how regulated your nervous system is, so regulated versus threat-driven. This gives us 4 distinct boundary behaviors, all well documented in psychology research. So in quadrant 1, you have the soft, resistant yes. This is threat-driven yes, people-pleasing, appeasement. So on the outside, you agree. On the inside, you feel drained, tense, or resentful. You're not saying yes from generosity, you're saying yes to avoid discomfort, yours or theirs. So this often sounds like, yes, I'll help, even though you know you're already overwhelmed. Or, yeah, I'll come, even though your body is exhausted. Or, sure, I'll lend the money, even though it puts you at risk. This yes costs you. Over time, resentment builds. Not because you're unkind, but because you're consistently overriding yourself. Clinically, we call this a fawn or appease stress response. And this is documented well in trauma and attachment literature. It's driven by the fear of conflict, abandonment, or disapproval. Quadrant 2, the hard, loving no. This is what we call the assertive boundaries. This is where healthy boundaries live. You're saying no to the request, but yes to honesty, self-respect, and long-term connection. The intention here isn't punishment or withdrawal, it's integrity. So for example, you can say, I love you and I can't make it tonight. I need to rest. I care about you and I'm not able to lend money right now. Or I'm not available to help with that, but I'm cheering you on. Psychologically, this is assertiveness. It's clear, direct, emotionally regulated, and respectful of both yourself and the other person. So here's a reframe a lot of people need. A resentful yes slowly damages relationships, and a loving no builds clarity and trust. Honesty is not rejection, it's relational integrity. Quadrant 3. The hard reactive no. This is a threat-driven no, more aggression and defensiveness. The boundary itself may be valid, but the delivery is fueled by anger, fear, or overwhelm. So it often sounds like, I already said no, stop asking. Or that's a ridiculous request. Or I'm not doing that, end of discussion. The nervous system here is in fight mode. Now, just an important distinction, this is not bad boundaries. It's boundaries expressed through threat physiology. So the outcomes here can feel like other people feel shut down or attacked. Repair feels harder afterward. Guilt or justification shows up later. So this quadrant usually emerges after too many quadrant 1 yeses. You've been people pleasing too long. So in other words, people don't become harsh, they become overloaded. And then quadrant 4, the soft, self-abandoning no. So this looks more like avoidance and withdrawal. This is the boundary that never quite lands. You say no, but indirectly, inconsistently, or with leakage. It often looks like avoiding the conversation entirely, delaying responses until the opportunity passes, saying maybe when you mean no, withdrawing instead of clarifying. The nervous system here is in freeze or collapse. You're not protecting the relationship, you're disappearing from it. Now, clinically, this aligns with avoidant coping and conflict avoidant attachment strategies. The cost here is confusion for others, ongoing anxiety for yourself, and missed opportunities for repair or intimacy. The goal is not more no's, the goal is regulated choice. So healthy boundaries are not about being nicer, tougher, more accommodating, more intimidating. They're about choosing from regulation instead of threat. Quadrant 2 is the target, not because it's polite, but because it's the only quadrant that preserves self-respect, preserves relationships, and reduces resentment over time. For most people, the hardest part of boundaries isn't the words. It's what happens after. The guilt, the anxiety, the urge to over-explain or even take it back. From a nervous system perspective, your body is interpreting someone else's disappointment as a threat to connection. So even when the boundary is healthy, your system reacts with panic. And if this happens to you, here's a simple regulation practice to use immediately after setting a boundary. Place one hand on your chest and one on your belly, and take 3 slow breaths and say internally or out loud, I'm allowed to have needs. I'm allowed to take care of myself. I can tolerate someone else's disappointment. You're not trying to convince yourself. You're teaching your nervous system that connection doesn't require self-abandonment. Discomfort doesn't mean danger, and you are still safe. This is how boundaries become sustainable. Let go of the myth that boundaries are mean. A no from love is always healthier than a yes from resentment. Yes, this work takes practice, and it takes learning to tolerate guilt without collapsing into self-criticism or over-functioning. And that's the work we do together inside Unstuck Burnout to Breakthrough. We don't just give you scripts, we help you heal people-pleasing at the nervous system level so you can actually hold your boundaries without falling apart afterwards. If you're ready to stop self-sacrificing for the sake of others and to start building relationships based on mutual respect, then you can click the link below to learn more. Thank you so much for taking time to be here. And remember, your needs are valid, your boundaries are allowed. Subscribe for more science-backed tools to help you build a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. Thank you so much.